හොඳ ලෙස හැදීමට හොඳ හිත ඕනෑ හැම විට නරක සිත් ඇති විට.
Today's country lies in South Asia, situated directly under India, and is renowned for its tea, beaches, and cinnamon. Get ready for our next stop around the world, Sri Lanka. This is not my story, but rather from my great-grandmother, passed down from generations. I don't know exactly when this story took place, but if I had to guess, I would say around 1940 to 1945. My great-grandmother was merely a child, like 5 or 6, but this event scarred her until the day she died. She lived in a small house with a farm that sustained her family. Her family wasn't poor nor wealthy, just your average household. Her father, my great-great-grandfather, was a prominent teacher in the village, so most people knew and respected the family. My great-grandmother mostly worked in the fields because she was still very young and school attendance was not as strict as it is today. Due to this lack of exposure, she rarely interacted with anybody her age, much less anyone outside the family in general. Anyways, on the day the story takes place, my great-grandmother was as usual out in the fields harvesting fruit for an upcoming celebration. After her work was done and the sun started to set, she left her tool outside the house and joined the large family for dinner. That night's meal was a fish curry, her least favorite dish, and she opted to skip out and only eat a small bowl of rice. If you've never been to Sri Lanka, it is incredibly humid, so we typically leave the doors open at night to cool down. Every house in the neighborhood did this, as it was, and still is, quite common in Asia to sleep with open doors. Exhausted from the heat, she fell asleep early, only to wake up in the middle of the night from her stomach growling, or at least that's what she initially thought woke her up. Like I said earlier, my great-grandmother decided to skip out on dinner that night, leaving her starving. She quietly crept down the wooden stairs towards the kitchen, searching for a jackfruit she picked earlier. There was no electricity during this time, and my family didn't have candles either, so her only source of light was the full moon. As she crept into the kitchen, she could make out a human silhouette frozen in place. Confused, she asked why my great-great-grandfather was up so late. With no response or movement, she kept staring at the figure until she noticed it was holding the tool that she left outside. Drowsy and hungry, she grabbed the jackfruit and headed back into her room. The next morning, my great-grandmother again asked her dad why he was in the kitchen and why he was ignoring her last night. He told her he had no idea what she was talking about and that he was asleep the entire night. He grew really concerned and asked what this person was doing, and she just explained that they were standing there, still in the dark, with her tool, a machete. Quickly realizing what just happened, my great-great-grandfather searched the entire property, but found nothing. Fearing for his family, he unfortunately moved the celebration to a different date and transported everybody to a friend's house. Fortunately, this person was never seen again, and my great-grandmother went on to live a happy 92-year life. This story serves as a type of urban legend for my family, especially for the children. Don't get up at night, or you'll run into the silent man. I'm Sri Lankan, and although I've recently moved to Europe, the story takes place in my homeland. My parents are separated, so I lived alone with my mom. She was, and still is, my best friend. We would do everything together, whether it was playing board games or hiking in the Sri Lankan jungle. If you've not been to Sri Lanka, I highly recommend visiting because the people are super friendly and there is much to do. The sunrises and sunsets are also spectacular, which is the setting the story takes place. I previously stated the story took place during my childhood in South Asia, so some details may be fuzzy. Every Friday morning, my mom and I would take the bike to the mountains and watch the sunrise. She had to work 12-hour days to make ends meet for us, but wasn't required to work Fridays, so we spent the morning together before I had to leave for school. We took the same path each time because of the wide trail that allowed the bike to reach the mountain peak. There was no chance a 6-year-old child like myself would have the endurance for such a hike. We had been visiting this path for over a year, so this particular morning was like any other. When the sky transitioned from a black to a dark blue, our departure was given the green light because our arrival to the peak would perfectly synchronize with the first light. After a quick morning prayer, we were off. It was wet season, so the path was still very wet and slippery from the previous night's rain, so my mom was sure to drive carefully. My favorite part about this journey was the isolation. We lived in a rural area, so we rarely saw anyone we didn't know, which was doubled in the early morning. The crisp air and roaring wildlife combined for a surreal experience. We crossed the bridge separating the mountains and eventually arrived to the path's limit. As you can imagine, it was freezing at this altitude, so we quickly enjoyed the view and promptly returned to the bike for tea at the house. As we turned the corner of the path, a lonesome man gave my mom and I a jump scare. We weren't expecting to see anybody, but it's not impossible for morning walkers to appear. He gave us a quick hello, and we returned a polite nod. Further down the path, we reached the bridge, and that's when I thought it was over. Halfway across the bridge, a loud crack and snap threw our bike forward, sending me airborne above my mom. As I slammed onto the old wooden planks, I found myself sliding off the bridge, unable to grasp anything. My mom was panicking and way too far away to grab me. I continued to slide and began to accept my fate into the foggy abyss. By some miracle, I grasped the rope railing with my fingers and held on for life. My mom instinctively pulled me up and held me in her arms, and I somehow survived. The man we saw earlier came rushing down due to the noise. He helped us retrieve the bike since we were terrified of slipping over again and were already on the other side. The front tire broke through the old slippery wooden plank and was lodged into the bridge with the back of the bike still hanging in the air. You see, I was riding in the back with my arms around my mom's waist, which is why I was thrown off. As he yanked on the bike, he too lost his footing, but was luckily able to fall to his knees and break his slip. It seemed the bridge was determined to take a victim that morning. He dragged the bike all the way to our house and was treated with tea at our house for his troubles, which he accepted, although he would not take any money from my mom. He helped calm us down and explained how he was here visiting a nearby relative and decided to enjoy the sunrise. This once stranger was now a good family friend, although I will keep his name anonymous, and we continued to talk to him until his recent passing, which is what motivated me to write this story. I am convinced our morning prayer saved us and is the reason we ran into the man on the path. Please be careful of your surroundings and use common sense. No offense, Mom. My name is Omar, and I haven't told anybody this story before. It's about a situation that was so rare and unlucky, yet it happened to me and my family. Although the Maldives usually gets the credit, Sri Lanka also has stunning beaches with crystal clear water. The Indian Ocean is truly remarkable. Anyways, I just received a big promotion from my job, so my wife and I decided a trip to the local beach would be a fine way to celebrate with the family. This specific spot was very secluded and required a 3-kilometer hike, which is about a 30 minutes walk. It is well worth it though, as there is never anybody there, leaving the strand of beach and its clear blue water all to us. We made sure to arrive early to fully enjoy the entire day and its sunshine. I should add that I have a very large family, which is customary in Southern Asia, so getting to the beach early was no easy task. My wife and the girls enjoyed reading and singing on the sand, while I enjoyed playing cricket or football with the boys, followed by some cooling off in the water. Before we knew it, the afternoon was already upon us, so I gathered everybody together for lunch. My teenage son, whose name I will leave out for his privacy, protested and wanted to stay in the water longer. Cheerful from the happy occasion, I relented and we ate without him. Not long after, though, I noticed something in the water. A stick, or more like a log, was floating in the ocean, heading straight towards my son. I was really concerned because the object was moving very quickly and there wasn't a lot of wind that day, so I stood up to get a closer look. The sudden epiphany literally raised the hair on the back of my neck. The object was now only a few meters away from my son, so I screamed at him and demanded that he get out of the ocean. My kids are very disciplined, but I have never raised my voice to that extent at them, so my son realized something was really wrong and followed my instruction, although at a slower pace than what I would have hoped. As he reached the shore, the log slowly returned into the open ocean and disappeared underwater. My wife and I mutually agreed the trip was over, so we all quickly packed up and returned home. Before this incident, I was puzzled why the beach was always empty. Like I said, it required a 3-kilometer hike, but this was on an established trail. I now understand why my secret beach was too good to be true. Nobody ever wants to relax on a beach that's infested by saltwater crocodiles.